So what? Happy Thursday. I'm Katie. I'm joined by Chris. John is in the Adirondacks wrestling. Mm, let's go with squirrels. So he wanted us to tell you all that he's wrestling bears, but since he left it to us to convey the message, he doesn't get to pick the animal. So he's wrestling squirrels. Very, very vicious ones.
Just nuts.
I see what you did there. So today on So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show, Chris and I are talking about how to measure your content. So this came up for a couple of different reasons. One, Chris, you are doing a session, a workshop at Content Marketing World. Is that correct?
That's correct. On Content Marketing Analytics 101.
And so we'll make sure that we include information on how you can sign up for that workshop if you're interested in doing so. But it's also just a question that we hear a lot. How do I know if my content is doing anything? And so we've talked, on the podcast, on the live stream, and blogs about how much content is produced on a regular basis, and just how to like first of all get your content out there so that people are reading it, are seeing it, but then you have to take that step to see, is it doing anything for you? So, Chris, today we're talking about how to choose the right metrics to measure with, your content marketing KPIs. So, having a plan before you even put the content out there, and then where to start looking at your content marketing data. So, with that, Chris, where do we start? If someone says to you, how do I know if my content is working? Where would you start with them?
Gosh, the first and most important thing to ask is, what are you measuring? What is the outcome? What's the objective you're after? Because a company that's an e-commerce company is going to have a different outcome than a company that's, say, a B2B SaaS company. And so
Mhm.
the first things we have to ask are all the basics. Do you have a measurement system in place? Say, like Google Analytics. Is it set up right? Do you have goals defined? Do you have goal values set up? Are your tracking codes actually on your content?
Mhm.
Do you have governance around how you use those tracking codes? So there's a whole bunch of prerequisites to content marketing analytics that you have to fulfill first. And if you don't have them, it's really, really hard to measure the impact of your content. It'd be like trying to follow a recipe in a cookbook for baking bread, and like, I've got no measuring cups, no spoons. I just got a big pile of flour, right? So it's like, okay, you might be able to bake something just by eyeballing everything. I'm not sure that I would eat it.
I would say that you probably need to, and this is, possibly a topic for a different show, but take a step back even farther. Why are you producing content in the first place? Is it because you think you need to because everybody else does it? Are you trying to do it to get people aware of your services? One of the things that Chris and I have talked about is, you know, we haven't been producing enough original content. And if, Chris wants to be even more well known for his work in data science, and I want to be known for my work with change management, I need to be producing that content that speaks to those stories and how it applies. Um, so once you know why you're creating the content, then to Chris's point, you need to start figuring out, what is important to you. Do you care that the most people see it so it gets clicks? Do you care that people engage with it so it gets comments and feedback? Or do you want to take it a step further and have your content linked to your sales portal and your e-commerce?
Exactly. So one of the things that's important to talk about is what we call metric scopes. And this is the unit of measurement that you're measuring your content with, because there's different units that apply to different parts of your strategy. And the analogy, in fact, I don't have any newspapers because I don't order newspapers anymore. Actually, let's just use this. This is an IRS tax bill I got recently that I was very unhappy to receive. Um,
Oh no.
yeah, exactly. So let's say I'm reading this huge pile of paper, right? When I'm looking at this, I point out an item on here. Huh, what's that? Huh, what's that? These are like events. So when you hear people talking in Google Analytics 4 about event-based tracking, it's nothing more than saying, "Hey, I did something just on a piece of paper. I just did something. I circled this line. There's a line here that I probably should talk to my accountant about. Let's go ahead and circle that. Okay, that's an event. On every page of this is a page, right? There's literally a page of paper. Um, I can read a page, right? Look at it, and maybe there's some pages here I'm going to go ignore. Like I just don't find this page useful, right? So that's our second scope is the page. We care about the metric associated with a page is a page view, right? Did I look at this page now? We care about page views when we actually care about what's on the unit, the page itself, right? So if you are trying to measure content from a page level perspective, like did this blog post get read? You're talking about page views. Now, let's say I'm going through and I'm reading this thing, and I've read some pages and other pages now, I don't think this, right? And I've read these pages. This group of pages I read while I was sitting here, this is what we call a session, right? So in Google Analytics, this would be a session. It's just a bunch of things I did all within the same period of time. This is a session.
Hmm.
We care about sessions a lot with marketing channels, right? Did Facebook start this session here? Did this session result in a conversion, right? Did I pick up the phone and call the IRS and say, yes, I'll pay my bill begrudgingly? The problem with having a functioning federal government. Um, did did some action result from the session, and what things went into the session, this pile of pages? And then the fourth scope is me, the user, the person, right? Am I a customer? Am I not a customer? And when we look at the different measures in content marketing, we have to say, what are we trying to study? Are we studying the person, like how many people did the thing? Are we studying a session, a series of actions? We're looking at a page. Are we trying to figure out if a thing on a page happened? Like if I'm trying to do, say, A/B testing of like a button, I very much care about event-based tracking, right? I don't care necessarily about the page. I care about, was it the red or the blue? Was it this word or that word? So that's a really important thing to start with metric scope, is to say, what are we measuring? Kind of what you were saying, Katie. What's the point? Why are we
Right.
doing this? And then matching that to the type of metric scope we need.
Do you find in your dealings with clients and your audience that there's a lot of times a mismatch, and so what I want to measure is not what I've created, therefore I'm trying to pull numbers out of something that just will never exist? And how do you prevent against that when you're putting together your content marketing plan?
It goes right back to what you were saying earlier, which is what decision are you trying to make, right?
Hmm.
If you're saying, I want to know whether a red button or a blue button works better, on our homepage, and you're measuring sessions, you got a mismatch between the metric and what you're trying to do. And so a big part of content marketing analytics is saying, are you measuring the right thing that goes with the decision you're trying to make? And a bigger picture problem there is, well, what decisions are you trying to make about your content marketing?
Hmm.
You raised the most important one, which is why are you even doing this? But then you get into what content should you be making? Where should you publish it? How do you get people's words to find it? When is the best time to publish it? So there's all these questions that you kind of have to have at least cataloged up front before
Hmm.
you even start trying to measure it.
And without getting too far off topic, I want to make sure that we mention, we're talking about, we're positioning it almost in context of this is a brand new thing. So making sure you have that plan before you do the content. But a lot of times, and most commonly, what we see is that the content has been produced for, a very long time in internet years. So it's like, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And there's a lot of content that's been produced and put out there. And now, you're retrofitting some sort of a measurement plan into it. It's like, oh, we should probably figure out whether or not this is doing anything for us. We've been doing it for this long. Do we need to keep doing it? And so, that's a little bit trickier, especially if the measurement, pieces weren't put into place when you first started doing the thing. So you may have a few years of lost data. And so I just want to sort of acknowledge that piece of it, is that a lot of what Chris and I are talking about is almost like as if you had the luxury of setting up something net new. But the majority of time, I think we're trying to retrofit within, legacy stuff.
Well, the good news there is that net new can start anytime. right? So you can always say from today onward is when we're measuring. We're going to fix this stuff today. It's going to be working after today. And we're just going to
Mhm.
pretend that the last year, 5 years, 10 years, lifetime has not happened.
Well, and I think that, there's definitely something to that. You don't need to wait for like July 1st or January 1st to put that stake in the ground and say, as of this day, like, why not today? What's today? What's wrong with July 29th? Why can't today be the day that you start fixing things?
Exactly. So the next thing we want to tackle is the KPIs themselves. What are your content marketing KPIs? So, Katie, when you think about is our content marketing working out, what do you say? What do you think are the numbers that matter the most?
Well, for us specifically, our content is meant to be used as an awareness tool. So having people get to know us, what we do, our stance on certain things. And so the kinds of KPIs that I'm interested in would probably be around organic search and SEO, page views, um, probably those 2 things are what stick out to me because I wanna know, is my content being read? Because I'm putting it out there to be read by people to become aware of us. So, can they find it, and are they reading it?
Right. So it's really important that you write out that sentence because when somebody says that, you can start to pick apart the measures you're going to need. So
Mhm,
let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and flip over to Google Data Studio, right? And we got a nice big blank chart here. So, Katie, I heard you say, I care about people finding our content, right? Is
mhm,
that so? The first thing we want to figure out then is we want to figure out what KPIs should be in a basic system of measurements. We're going to slap up a new table here.
yep. So, my persona statement is, as a CEO, I want to understand if people can find our content so that, um so that they read it,
Right. So
basically.
so that they read it and eventually do something with us, right?
Right.
So here we have we have one metric, one dimension, the page, the title of the page, and then the
Mhm,
number of new users, because again, we're talking about discovery. So all users would not necessarily be as good a measure here based on your user statement because you want new people coming in.
mhm.
So this would be a very simple. I'm using my personal website's data here, but you can use obviously whatever you want. Um, Here's the page title. How
Mhm,
many new users within this given period of time came in? So in this case, my home page, number one. Number two is my subscription preferences page. Number three is my newsletter subscription page, and then some blog posts.
right.
And so this would be a first set of KPIs, right? If the new users number goes to zero, I'm fired, right? My website is dead. I'm just not getting any new users. I'm in a lot of trouble. The second thing that you mentioned is we want people to find us by search, right?
Mhm,
So an important thing to do at least once, and it's not the most fun thing, um, is to look at what dimensions and metrics are available in a piece of software like Google Analytics. And this is true of all analytics software. So if you're an Adobe shop, if you're a Matomo shop, it doesn't matter what you are, look at what's available. And Google Analytics has, this a really big um, let's see if I can find the Dimension Explorer. Do API dimensions and metrics. Nope, that's not it. Where did it go? It used to be in the left-hand menu here.
Oh, Google changing things without telling you. So, you know, it one of the things that, we often talk about are the things that are out of your control in terms of, making changes. And so this, harkening back to a couple of episodes ago is a really good example where Google doesn't tell you when they make changes. And so as you're trying to go through the same process you've always gone through, so Chris is trying to find the dimensions and metrics. Google's changed how that looks and where you can find that information. And so now you
Yep,
have to reset your process based on something that was out of your control.
exactly. So here is the Dimensions and Metrics Explorer. Note that there's a difference between GA3 and GA4. And one of the things to look at here is what are the different measures that are available and dimensions that are available to you. Again, this is not, I would say, compelling reading. This is not something that you want to, just pull up a cup of coffee with and sift through, but at least take a look to see what's available to you once. Now, back to our example, you had said searches, right? We want people to
Mhm.
find it by searches. So if I look in my list of measures, one of the measures I have available to me is organic searches. I'm going
Mhm.
to put that in here. And what we see is very interesting here, right? The overall new users does not
Mm.
look like the organic searches column. So let's go ahead and change my sort here.
Are we able to filter the pages by only blog pages?
You
Or is
could.
that something we would need to do in Google Analytics before bringing it into Data Studio?
It depends on how your blog is set up. So the Trust Insights blog and my blog have something in common. And what that thing in common is that we keep the dates in our URLs, right? So if
Mhm.
I have blog posts,
Well, doesn't it
go ahead
also
and
keep the word blog in the URL?
no, does
Well,
not.
you learn something new every day.
So go to page contains. Actually, I'm going to do a page matches contains regular expression. And I want
Okay.
201 and 202, which is 2019 and 2020, or the 2010s and 2020s. This now takes away all the pages that don't have that in the URL.
Okay.
So,
And that for me as the person in the persona who is looking for the information makes sense. Like, yeah, it's great that someone comes to my homepage. I'm more interested in the blog content that we're writing. Like I would expect people to come to our homepage, but that to me is a different, scenario that I'm interested in. I want to know if I'm taking the time to write something, is someone then reading it?
yep. Now, here's something very interesting when you look at this very simple dashboard. Some of the pages, organic searches and new users match up really well, right? You can see the sort of that power law curve. Other pages, there's a big gap, right?
Hmm.
This marketing strategy blog post, lots of new users, but not a lot of organic searches. And so now the question you have to ask, well, what happened there? Like, why are we getting new users if we're not able to, if it's not through search? And that's where having some kind of a filtration mechanism would be helpful. So let's put one in actually. I'm going to switch this down to 10 rows so that we don't have this taking up the entire page. But I like
And
to have a little
so
summary now.
are you saying, for, if I'm sort of being introduced to this brand new, so I'm saying I want to know that they're finding us through organic search. And what this data is telling me is organic search may not be how they're finding this content.
Right. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So that's a really important thing. So let's go ahead and add in another table here. And we're just going to make this a source medium table.
Hmm.
Let's put in source medium. And I'm going to put interaction filters on both of these. An interaction filter in Data Studio allows you to click on a result and then have it change the rest of the page by that result. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my view mode here. And I want to let's look at this. This is a blog post, how to determine whether something's a trend, right?
Mhm.
It's got some good users here, 109 new users, but no searches. So how do people find it? If I click on just that post, it's through
Oh,
social
I didn't
media.
even know that was a feature. That's super cool.
Uh-huh. Exactly. So in my case, I clicked on that post and it's Twitter. Twitter is what drove that post. Um,
Wow.
or if I want to look at, okay, well, what pages is organic search driving? I'm gonna click on my Google organic there, and now I can see my new users. This tail sorted by new users from just Google organic. So I can
Hmm.
filter in either direction, but it's a good way to look at this based on your user statement. Well, what if I want to look at email? Like, how's email working for us? Right? You can see the organic searches here have all basically gone to zero, right? Because
Hmm.
it's email.
Right.
But see, what pages on my blog is email driving traffic to?
Mm. That is super interesting. And now, could we take it a step further and look at the terms? So this is a question we get a lot is, well, how do people, so we know the channels people are finding us from, but like if I'm in, if I'm looking at Google, how do I, as a CEO, know what words somebody typed into the search bar and they found us?
Yes. So what you're asking about is, can we find that search data? And you're not going to find it in Google Analytics. It just doesn't live there. Where it does live is in Google Search Console. So let's go
Mm.
ahead and find me.
And so, pro
And
tip, if you are creating a lot of content and you don't have Search Console set up, today is the day, July 29th. Put that stake in the ground. Today is the new day that we're going to start fixing things and set up Search Console.
exactly. So let's go ahead and plop in another fun chart. And let's see what we have for our dimensions and metrics here. So we have a query, and we have a landing page, and we have our clicks.
Now,
Well,
are you able to apply filters across pages, or is it just that one page that you're on?
it's just
Like,
the one page that you're on.
oh, okay. Still a cool
So in
feature.
this case, that would be handy. Let's go ahead and resize these columns to fit the data. So now I can see the term, the
Hmm.
page that they went to, and how many clicks it got. And I can also, if we want to get a little fancy, let's put in our URL click-through rate so that we can see how efficient a page is at getting search traffic, right? Because we can now see that there, even though this is the top page here by total number of clicks, the click-through rate's a little on the low side. So let's put a number there.
Hmm.
Okay. And now let's go into our view mode. So now I can look at this and go, okay, well, what's really working for me in terms of search, right? Is it
Hmm.
share of engagement, one click unsubscribe, my name? Um, this one's actually a little concerning to me. It's like, why is my name not doing better for? There's not enough people searching for me. It's heartbreaking.
That sounds like an existential crisis that we can explore next week.
Exactly. But we can see pretty clearly here, these are the things that, the pages that are doing reasonably well within this time frame. I can
Hmm.
also obviously sort by click-through rate and see what are the pages that get, good click-through. So this one is Awakening Superhero blog. That's a branded search and has a very high thing. Causation without correlation. That post has, 75% of people who clicked it got there. And there's little onesies and twosies. Then you start getting down to here, share of engagement, right? We have strategy, tactics, and execution. So now I can start to see, okay, these are pages that do pretty well,
Hmm.
but could they do better? Could I optimize them more if I wanted to improve them?
And the answer is yes.
Well,
And
yeah, the answer
that's
is always yes. You can always improve
yeah,
something.
exactly. So I think that that's super helpful. So let's say let's say I change my objective. And so when I, did my original persona statement, I said, as a CEO, I want to know how people are finding our content and if it's being read. So we looked at new users coming to the website to read the content. We looked at organic search. But let's say I want to know if my content is helping me sell anything.
Is your content helping to sell anything? Hmm.
I mean, we've been asked that question a lot. And the first thing if someone asked me that question, the first thing I would say is you need to be a little bit more specific with your question because that's very broad. Now, it's a common question, but you can start to pick it apart and say, well, what do you mean? Do you mean, is someone going to your blog and saying, yes, that's the product I need? Let me go pick up the phone and call the sales team. Or is that blog then linking directly to your e-commerce and someone can buy something that way? Or is there literally something someone can buy directly from that blog page?
The challenge that you're running into there is that content, and goes back to scoping, content operates at the page level, right?
Hmm.
Whereas a conversion operates at a session level. So you have a group of pages will be part of a session that leads to a conversion, but an individual page may or may not be. And generally speaking, if you were to do a straightforward, it's like what pages have what goal completions number assigned to them, there's always going to be like essentially the last touch. It's always going to be the landing page or the form page that the conversions occurs on, because that's the that's the limit of a page level scope. The way around that, so there might be a way around. There's two ways around that. There's the mathematically sophisticated way, which is to say, gather up all the pages per session in sessions that have conversions and build a Markov chain model to essentially say what pages and in what sequences tend to nudge people towards conversion. This is something that we do in our most valuable pages report, where we can say, okay, what pages all participate in a path to conversion. So I'll bring up an example here. Actually, no, I won't, because I didn't run one. Or do I have an older one laying around? I do have an older one laying around. So for Trust Insights, for example, this would be an example. These are the pages, like the various webinars and stuff like that, some various blog posts like this podcast episode where they participated in conversions, even if they were not the last thing somebody did.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that this is not an out-of-the-box feature of Google Analytics. This is not something that you can do in Data Studio because it doesn't support Markov chain modeling. The closest you can get to it in Data Studio, actually, I don't think you could easily get to it in Data Studio, but you could get to it in Google Analytics 4 if your Google Analytics 4 is set up. So let's go to Google Analytics 4. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go to the Explorer. Let's go
Because
to our path.
as you're pulling that up, I would imagine if your executive came to you and said, you need to tell me that the content marketing that we're doing is helping our overall revenue and sales, or else we have to stop doing it. Like that's a scenario that happens. And so the question then becomes, which is the one we're trying to solve for, is how do you demonstrate that your content marketing is assisting with the overall sales?
Right. So you need to be able to track conversion. So a prerequisite of this technique would be you have to have conversion set up in Google Analytics 4. If you don't, this won't work. We need to make a segment. And this is going to be, again, see, here we have user session and event. So the question is, do we care about users or do we care about sessions? In this case, because we're talking about content, we're talking about a stack of pages, and therefore the scope is going to be that session segment as opposed to a user. So we're going to call this conversion sessions, and our condition is going to be conversions. Is there a conversion event contains true? I hit apply and hit save. So now I'm starting to build a path analysis very slowly of where of pages on my site where there was a true conversion. I'm going to change, because this is not super helpful. This is event based. I'm going to
Mhm.
change this to page title and screen name.
And can you filter then from there to just your blog content?
Yes, I should be able to do that by adding a filter on page. Do you want page path? Yes, page path. Okay, so page path, I'm going to add in a filter. The filter is going to be, ooh, that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do a regex on that.
So then would it just be page title?
Page titles are not on my blog. I don't have the word blog in the page title.
No, but you do have the date stamps.
That's in the URL, not the title of the page.
Mm. This is actually interesting that we're, trying to solve for this now, because this, I would imagine, is going to become a common issue moving forward, especially depending on how, your website is set up. So if you don't have any indicator on your page title or in your URL that someone is now on a blog, this
Right.
will be really hard to do.
Right. Hmm. I think the only way I could conceive of doing that would be to fire an event in GA4 that would tag that event as being a blog specifically.
Mm.
That that could get really ugly really fast.
Okay,
Um,
so we can put that aside for now and maybe cover that in a different episode. So, in the example that you're showing from GA4, what you're trying to do is demonstrate that the content on your site has led someone to take an action, which is a conversion.
that's right. And so we can start doing in the path analysis is try and figure out where is it that people go, right? So they some go to the home page. Like here's one that was led to a conversion at the AI archives, right? There's that went back to the home page, but there was a conversion event on that page. Um,
Hmm.
there's people who are going to my speaking page. Here's another one: how to start your public speaking career. Yep. Okay. So I'm starting to be able to look through because I'm filtering only by those sessions where there was a conversion event. If I took that out, this would obviously look very, very different. But this would
Hmm.
be a way to start trying to understand the paths people take in a site through that level of conversion. This is not ideal, right?
Right.
Again, because you cannot mathematically do a a Markov chain model in your head for this, and that's essentially what you're trying to do. Um, and
And the
I
more
can't think of
content that you have and the bigger your site is.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. With one of our clients, we have one client where we have to process several million page views every month for their analysis, which is why I have a second cooling fan on my laptop at the moment because it's
Hmm.
processing all that data, and you can't do that by hand. So this would
Right.
be a relatively simplistic way to get at that, but I would really say if you want to get that true understanding of what content is generating uh, impact, this would be one way. The other way is if you've defined goal values, meaning there's a dollar amount set to your goals. There's a defined currency to them. Then if you go into Google Analytics, you go into behavior, go to site content, all
And
pages.
to note, you are now back in Google Analytics 3.
Yes, I flipped back to Google Analytics 3. There's actually a page value computation, which is Google's attempt at trying to say, okay, what is the value of this, the dollar value of this page as it contributed to those to the end state. So there are some things like these are all the Gum Road pages that obviously have a substantial high value. Ooh, I need to take out HubSpot's tracking code in my URL of those.
But
That's ugly.
But this doesn't tell you if a conversion transpired. This just tells you what Google is trying to assign as a page value based on the value that you have assigned to a conversion. Is that correct?
That's correct, but the way it does is it's assigns partial credit. So the higher aggregate dollar page value has, the more that page has participated in conversions along the way.
Mhm. I see. And I think it's also worth noting. So in GA4, you were showing the path analysis and tying it to conversions. In GA3, you can do a similar path analysis, but it is not tied to conversion. So I just want to make sure that it's clear because you may be looking at it saying, but I already have that in GA3. You do, but there's no conversion tied to it. It's literally just where did somebody hop along on your website?
Yep. So yeah, I mean, this is the challenge that we all face as analytically minded marketers. How do we reconcile there's different levels of scopes all the
Mhm.
time. There's different levels of scopes in each of the applications. They work differently. But I would say, at least in terms of being able to start to answer that question, this would be one of the ways to start getting towards it.
So I've thrown you a couple of curveballs purposely because I know that those are the questions that people are likely to ask you in, your workshop that you're giving at Content Marketing World. But so basically, what we've done is we've said, okay, you as the marketer first need to figure out why you're creating the content in the first place. Is it for awareness? Is it for engagement? Someone's already aware of you, but you want to keep them back and keep giving them useful information? Or is it for, them to convert, to do something? And so those three goals would be measured very differently. And then once you know why you're doing it, then you can start to understand what metrics are available to you in order to measure against the goal. And that's a lot of what Chris is going to be covering in his workshop. So, Chris, you're showing something that looks terrifying and scary. So, what the heck are we looking at?
So this is something that we put together a little earlier today. And if you want to participate in this, go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. I asked the community in analytics for marketers and also in the CM World Slack, what are your questions you have about content marketing analytics? And I copied and pasted all the questions out of the Slack groups. I started putting them in buckets. Google Analytics, which is this lower bucket right down here, is by far the biggest of the buckets people have. Then there's a general strategy bucket. There's attribution is there. Then general measurement. Then tag manager. Then SEO. So right now, what I'm trying to do is just kind of gather up the questions people have, the general topics that those fall into, and then figure out, okay, how do we convert this into a workshop that answers the questions people have, the real
Mhm.
questions, but also is coherent and is not just one really long AMA. Because as much fun as that is, it's difficult to remember everything because there's not a coherent story to it. So, this is almost a segue from last week's talk on how to we do public speaking better. But from here, we have to take this and turn into a curriculum, because this by itself
Mhm.
is just raw materials. But if you've got questions that we haven't answered, hop on over to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. We are still gathering information as people post it to the Slack group and trying to figure out where in this lovely landscape those questions go.
And so, Chris, if people are interested in taking your workshop at Content Marketing World that really expands on everything we've been talking about today and digs in deep, to the details, where could they find information on signing up for that workshop? Would they go to contentmarketingworld.com? Is there a better way for them to find it?
Yep, just go to contentmarketingworld.com, register, and the workshops are separate. So the workshops are September 28th, and they are in person. So bring a mask along, because you will be asked to wear one. Even if the convention center doesn't, I will make you wear one in my session. Uh,
I believe
uh,
it.
exactly. And again, ask questions in advance, because what I'm really looking forward to with the workshop is gathering people's questions up front so that we can have the time to put together something that's going to answer 80 or 90% of them. Not all the questions are going to fit in. And so for the ones that don't fit in, we'll tackle them on future issues of in the Trust Insights newsletter, in the Trust Insights podcast, or in the Slack group as well.
I wish I could be there with you. I won't be at Content Marketing World with you, but I am jealous of all the people who get to take that workshop, because I do feel like it's a question we hear a lot. How do I measure my content? How do I know if my content's working? What do I do next with my content? And so, you'll be covering that and more, over the course of 4 hours. And, the goal is for marketers to walk away with, a set of tools that they can go, okay, I can apply this today to what I have and then build on that. So, Chris, final thoughts, any final pro tips for people who are struggling to figure out how to measure their content?
The thing that I would really emphasize is if you're watching this live, or even if you're not, if you're just catching it on a replay, please go ahead and um, take a shot at building this yourself. You watched us step by step building these two dashboards in Google Data Studio. It's free. There's no money. You just had to have Google Analytics set up and put in place. Take the time to write down those user statements, and then ask what metrics are available in the Google Analytics metrics compendium. Do they map to this, and then can I put them in a dashboard and make them make sense? So I would, and this is something that's going to be true for the workshop folks too. It's going to be hands-on. Like, I'm not going to let people just sit there and veg for 4 hours. It's like, no, you're going to get out your laptop or your tablet or whatever and build the thing, because I want people, you including you watching this, to walk away from this with something in hand. Like, okay, I at least have this. If I don't have anything else, at least I have this. And that to me is the most important thing.
I agree with that. And, again, super excited to see, how it turns out. So I think with that, Chris, that is the show for the week. And so tune in next week to see who won the wrestling match between John and the, rabid squirrels that he's wrestling in the Adirondacks. I'm sure he'll tell us all about it.
All right, take care. Bye. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.